The NBA trade deadline is nearly here, and the major expectation is that the Raptors are going to be extremely active. But what might they actually be planning at the deadline? Could they actually make a buying sort of trade? I'm going to explain why in today's video. Let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody. This is Amateur Hour Sports, the YouTube channel completely dedicated to providing you with Toronto Raptors news coverage and analysis in videos just like this, as well as in live stream watch parties for every Raptors game. If you find yourself enjoying this video along the way, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe. With trade deadline right around the corner, we have tons of great content coming your way on this channel, so don't miss out by subscribing and hitting that notification bell. But trade deadline is Thursday, February 8th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. The Raptors have a lot of business to take care of in the time leading up to that exact deadline. Well, the Raptors in previous years have always had some sort of expectation to be extremely active heading into the trade deadline, but they typically kind of fall short of those wild expectations set beforehand. Like last season, they started the day by trading for Jakob Poeltl, a trade to this day that still hampers the Raptors and their future considerations, and we thought that more moves were going to follow Jakob Poeltl coming from the San Antonio Spurs, but then time went on, hours went on, and all of a sudden, well, that was the only trade that the Raptors made. But in this case scenario, in this situation, this year, it really feels like there is no other choice but the Raptors to be in fire sale mode with tons of their players, barring maybe 3 or 4 of their players heading into the trade deadline. The Raptors this season have fallen well short of expectations. They were projected at the start of the season to win around 36 to 37 games. I kind of felt that was a little bit on the lower side of what the projections should have been, but even before trading OG Anunoby, even before trading Pascal Siakam, they were wildly off the pace of even coming close to that win total. So there was a recognition that this team just was not going to be good enough, and especially after trading away those 2 players, this team clearly is not good enough. This team clearly is not very good. They have slumped to a bottom 6 record in the NBA. They just got absolutely plowed by the New Orleans Pelicans. It's very evident that something needs to change. This current period for the Raptors are going to be extremely difficult. Only one more game before the trade deadline, but just navigating the last week or so here with all these new players, with all these new systems, no longer having Siakam on the team, having that go-to piece of the offense. Scottie Barnes, all of a sudden now the focal point of the offense. So many players on this team are wondering if they're even going to be on this team at the end of the week. It's kind of tough to navigate that. It's tough for the coaches to prepare for games. It's tougher, especially for coaches to prepare for these games with players who maybe not be as engaged, knowing that they won't be on the team at the end of the week, or knowing that the team doesn't necessarily want them to be on the team at the end of the week. All of these situations are incredibly difficult to navigate, so I'm very much looking forward to that period next week where all of the new players, in theory, the new players who come to the team or whatever may happen to the team in the next week, everything has settled, the dust has settled, we know what the roster is, we know what we can do for the rest of the season development-wise, we know what rotations we want to employ, all of this and more, everything is going to be nice and calm, but we have to go through the storm before we get to the calm. And like I said earlier, it's going to have to be a fire sale situation for the Raptors. But just because it is a fire sale situation, as I said in the intro, it doesn't mean the Raptors can't actually make some sort of buying move at the trade deadline. I'll explain that a little bit later on. But for the Raptors, what it should be, you look at Scottie Barnes obviously as the untouchable piece of the team going forward. That is the centerpiece. That is the player you are working on building around. I know there's been a lot of criticism going towards Scottie Barnes in the last 2 weeks about his play on offense, especially in late game situations, especially as the first option. These takes are ludicrous, by the way. I mean, let's just interject here and say this is a 22-year-old going through some monster changes to the roster, who is playing as the first option on the team for the first time in his career, has only been performing in this role for 2 weeks, and in that OKC game where he was wildly criticized for his lack of scoring production in the fourth quarter and overtime, Darko Rajakovic after the game said their game plan late wasn't to get Scottie the ball, it was going for other mismatches, mainly for Emmanuel Quickley. So it's a little bit of coaching. And yes, you know what? Scottie Barnes, not exempt from criticism, needs to be a little bit more aggressive from time to time. But with this whole situation changing on the fly, he's 22 years old. He still might sneak into an all-star team as an injury replacement. I think we can give Scottie Barnes a little bit more time without being too harsh with the criticism. He is the centerpiece of this team going forward. Emmanuel Quickley was acquired as a centerpiece of that OG Anunoby trade. The Raptors front office, they love the fit of Emmanuel Quickley long-term next to Scottie Barnes. So do I. RJ Barrett has been exceptional scoring-wise since arriving with the Raptors. That's a player you absolutely have to keep, especially at 23 years old. And honestly, the way Grady Dick is playing, I mean, it was a much improved game against the Pelicans, despite the 40-point drubbing the Pelicans handed the Raptors. Grady Dick, I mentioned in the last video, I talked about why you should believe in the player. I believe in the player. I don't want to see him get traded here. I want to keep a hold of the player. Everybody else, I mean, if you can get something of value, if you can get some sort of return for the player, if you can get any future considerations, assets that will help the Raptors in the future, whether it be small or big, you probably want to go and make a move right now. The top of the list here, Bruce Brown has to get traded here. His time with the Raptors hasn't been as impressive as I thought it would be. Bruce Brown is a player I'm a big fan of, but he fits into the category of players who play better with good players around them as that complementary piece. Hasn't really shown that for the Raptors, although he might just be mentally checked out knowing he's going to get traded regardless. There's going to be no shortage of suitors there. He is going to get traded. If the Raptors can get anything of value for Chris Boucher, they got to go and do that. If they can find a team that's going to eat that $11 million contract for Chris Boucher next season, by any means necessary, they got to go and do it. Something in mind for me, can they send him to the Los Angeles Clippers, eat PJ Tucker's contract for the rest of the season, get 2 second-round picks for them, a 2024 second-round pick and a 2030 second-round pick? I think that's something that they maybe could pull off. But those are the top of the top. Other players that absolutely need to be in considerations to be traded. Otto Porter Jr., could a contender feel like he can still affect their team? I think maybe. Here's a guy who got starting minutes in the 2022 NBA Finals for the championship Golden State Warriors team. Absolutely got to look at trading Gary Trent Jr. if you can. I know it's a rental, but if you can get something, maybe you go and do it. Dennis Schroeder, for sure, if you can get any sort of value, look at trading. And even Jakob Poeltl probably fits into the category of players that you should probably look to trade if a team is looking for size and rebounding. And a team like maybe the Oklahoma City Thunder could be looking for that. Could you attach a couple of first-round picks to just eating Davis Bertans' contract? That might be worth it for the Raptors to send Poeltl to the Thunder, and that might be worth it for the Thunder to get off that Bertans contract and add in a player that I think helps the team right away. You slide Chet down to the 4. Poeltl's your pick and roll partner with SGA. He's your rim protector. I think that makes a lot of sense as well. These are the sort of players the Raptors absolutely need to be considering trading, but I mean, there really is not many safe players on this list here. Thaddeus Young, if you can use him as salary for a trade, why not move him? Kyra Lewis, whatever the situation is there, hey, if a team is actually interested, go ahead. Jordan Nwora, it'd be nice to kind of see what he does for the rest of the season, but hey, if a team wants him in a trade, you can get some sort of value out of him. Why not go and pull the trigger on a trade? These are the situations Raptors are going to have to maneuver right now. You're going to have to try and get as many assets for the future as possible. And yeah, guys, the rest of this season is not going to be pretty. But that's kind of what the front office wants to happen here. They have a bottom 6 record right now. A bottom 6 record would give them a 45% chance of keeping that top 6 protected pick they sent over to the Spurs in the Jakob Poeltl trade 1 year ago. Only 45%. A bottom 5 record gives them a 61 or 63% chance of keeping that first round pick. Not tremendous percentages, but a bottom 7 record is only a 31% chance. So, the tank wars well and truly have begun in Toronto. You got to take the moral victories along the way where you can this season. But what if they told you the Raptors could be a buying team of sorts at the trade deadline? Masai Ujiri said in the press conference following the Pascal Siakam trade that the Raptors, well, they have 3 picks in the same vicinity right now. One of them is upper middle of the draft with that Indiana Pacers pick, likely to end in around the 16 to 20 range for the Indiana Pacers pick. They have that pick. They have a very late first round pick that will come from likely either the Thunder or the Clippers, depending on who has a better record. It'll be the worst of those 2 picks. And they have a very early second round pick coming from the Detroit Pistons. Besides, Ujiri in that post-trade press conference said that he seriously doubts the Raptors will be drafting 3 times in the draft. So that could mean a multitude of things. That could mean that, hey, they might have their own pick and get 4 picks. They might trade Bruce Brown for a pick and have 5 picks. But what if they package some of those picks to move up in the draft? What if they package some of those picks actually trade for a player that they covet of sorts? The Raptors could be a buying team of sorts in a certain trade at the trade deadline, but it could just come for a player that they'd rather have as a young player. They know who he is. They know what he has. They know the potential. They know what they can work on. Bring him in and send out the picks because they want to take on a player that they believe in. And one of those players that they believe in that they could bring into the team could be Quentin Grimes. The New York Knicks are interested in Bruce Brown, so can you send Bruce Brown to the Knicks, take that Evan Fournier contract for the rest of the season, decline the player option in the season, he's off your books, expiring contract, and then also take on Quentin Grimes in the deal? The Knicks aren't using Quentin Grimes a ton. He's a 23-year-old player looking for a new place to play. Already knows Emmanuel Quickley, already knows RJ Barrett. I think it's a pretty good situation for Quentin Grimes to come into, and the shooting and floor spacing he'd bring would be a very welcome sight to the team. So it's not necessarily buying to be better, but it's buying because you want to take on the players you covet, the players you really like, rather than going through the process of drafting a player and working out the kinks of that player right away. You want to know what you have. You want to know what the player stands for and what you have with that player going forward. You want to be a little bit more sure of that. And another reason why the Raptors could be a buying team of sorts, that could be just one instance. I don't think, again, they're going to be a buying team trying to be better post-trade deadline. I think they want to, in all instances, make this team worse after the trade deadline to secure better odds of actually keeping that top 6 protected pick. But why they could continue to be a buying team of sorts and maybe not prolong this rebuild phase here, why they want to turn around things very quickly, well, you have to consider the ownership situation here with MLSE. There's some rumblings that they want to do some renovations to the Scotiabank Arena, some sort of rumblings that MLSE wants to do a bit of a rebrand in the next few years. It's a lot easier to do these things with money being brought in from the team and general interest around the team being up. That is not going to be the case with a rebuilding team. So if that's the case, listen, I think the Raptors could be a buying team regardless of what MLSE says. A buying team in the sense of finding these young players they covet to shorten this rebuild phase here. But if there is that added pressure from ownership as well on Masai Ujiri to make these sort of decisions, then absolutely it should not be surprising if the Raptors are packaging picks for young players. Not for older stars, not for two-way athletic scores that are going to really help this team for the rest of the season. It is going to be long-term planning with everything the Raptors do right now. And this phase here for the Raptors, this rebuilding phase, it's going to be tough. And it might be tough for a long while here, but the process in place here, the Raptors have pieces that are very interesting. One piece in particular in Scottie Barnes, that is the centerpiece going forward that they have a ton of faith in, and you should have that faith as well. It's going to be difficult for the rest of the season, very difficult, as we saw with that Pelicans game. It might be difficult for a year or two after that, but we want to see consistent development here, consistent work on putting things right for the future. And really, all of these considerations kind of start Thursday. I mean, Raps could make trades before Thursday, but it really just gets started Thursday. We lay down the foundation for possible success in the future and see what comes up of it. But the Raptors, it's got to be fire sale mode for this team at that trade deadline. So what do you make of the trade deadline? Who do you think is going to be on the move? What do you think the Raps can get? Give me your best mock trade in the comments down below. That's all for me for today. Hit that like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more Raptors content and for even more Raptors content. I was live on the Bleacher Report app earlier today. I pinned the link to that stream in the comments down below, but I went even further on the trade deadline preview for the Raptors. Again, live on the Bleacher Report app. Check out the link in the description. Follow me on the Bleacher Report app so you know when I go live there again. I'm going live again on Friday, and I'll see you again next time for more content, whether it be here on Amateur Sports or perhaps an app like Bleacher Report. See you again soon.